Brilliant. Welcome everybody to the Serpent Tarot for another exciting deck creator interview. Today I'm really delighted to talk with Susan Whigham, who is the creator of a beautiful new tarot deck called the Sahira Tarot. Is that the right pronunciation of it, Susan? Good. I should have checked that before. It's a gorgeous deck that really drew me in because it's really diverse, it's really inclusive, and in a very clever way, I think, in a way that feels very natural. And I've been looking for decks like that I really feel have that kind of immediacy of connection. And I really feel this about this deck. And I wanted to talk with Susan about, how she created it, why. This deck is available on Etsy. So I found it on Etsy. I constantly trawl Etsy to find the new and interesting decks and happily found this with Susan. So before I go into it and welcome Susan, I just want to show you a couple of cards, because what you'll see at the end is we're going to each read for the collective because we both have the deck and we're both readers. But I want to show you the clincher card that when I saw it, I thought I have to have this deck. Look at this for a Page of Swords. Like, that is so perfect. That kind of expression of wonder, excitement, all the kind of things that the Page of Swords says to me about sort of, how communication and connection is so important. Absolutely gorgeous. And then now that I have the deck, the other one that really strikes me, because I've already been using it in private readings, is the Knight of Wands. Because to me, it's like, look at the joy in that face. And like, that is so perfect for the Knight of Wands, that sense of moving forward with excitement and exhilaration. So one of the things I really think about this deck, and we will talk about it a bit through the interview, but maybe also at the end, because we're going to talk about some other decks that Susan's done, including one on emotional intelligence or emotional expression. I think you're amazing, Susan, at finding the right expression for these. It's a delightful deck. So welcome to the interview.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. So let's start with a little bit about you so that people know who you are. So tell me a little bit, you are a reader and a spiritual seeker and so forth. So a little bit about your spiritual path, your creative path, and how that led you to create your own decks.
So I grew up in a fairly strict conservative Christian environment, and one in which tarot reading and any kind of spiritualism was strictly prohibited.
Wow.
And so it was a while before I moved on from that belief system and then began to explore tarot. But once I did begin exploring it, I was like, this is for me for sure. And so here I am almost 25 years later, of having studied tarot as well as dream interpretation, handwriting analysis, symbolism in fairy tales, all sorts of different forms of self-reflection. And it's been my interest for a long time to create a deck, but I just really haven't had the right tools. I started many years ago. I have been working on doing a watercolor deck, painting, but it was very slow going. And, once I stumbled onto AI as a tool, I was like, this is it. This is the tool I've been waiting for. So I'm really excited. I mean, and once I really started getting the hang of the software and everything, it just really took off from there. It was just like one idea after another unfolding.
Brilliant. And in fact, that sort of segues to something I did want to ask you about, because the use of AI in tarot decks seems to be a little bit of a controversial topic. I'm sure you're aware of that. I personally, just for the record, I don't claim to know anything about the legalities. And if I don't have a lot of knowledge about something, I don't develop an opinion particularly. And so I have certainly listened to other readers who've talked about it. Excuse me. One of the ones that I really listen to is Dustin, who's on Modern Metaphysicae, and he sort of said this is very complex, and he has an art background, so I take I take sort of notice of what he says. But from my perspective, I find that AI decks are incredibly good to read with. I don't know what it is about them. I don't know whether it's something about how I connect with AI generated art. I have no idea, but I find them very, very deep. But I also, from talking to creators who do use it, it's not just kind of like trawling the web for images. There is a lot of creative, the artist's creativity that goes into it as well. And I know that that's obviously the case with yours. So do you want to have a bit of a talk about that?
Sure. So as you said, it's not as simple as just, pulling images out of a hat. There's definitely a lot of human input that's required for the process. I also find AI images extremely resonant, and part of the reason I feel is that there is a randomizing aspect of it, just as we shuffle the cards. The computer is shuffling the image, and so there's I feel that it is possible to connect with it in a spiritual way, even though it's a computer, because it has that sort of aperture for randomizing. It gives an opening for spirit to influence it, as I see it. So yeah, it's also very challenging to get it to do exactly what you want. That's another thing. You really have to know what you're after, and you have to shape it and massage it, and get it to where you, and with tarot, you have such a very specific set of archetypes that it takes some working it out to make sure, and then the artist has to apply their eye and their vision to, to curate the images and say, does this resonate or does this not, and that's really the key role of the artist as an AI creator is to say, to weed out the stuff that just is meaningless, So the computer doesn't know the difference between one image and another, but it's just sort of the magic, as someone who's also studied filmmaking, it's the magic of creating an illusion, even though it's not reality. What we see on the screen, it gets into our heart and we take it in, and we absorb it, and it's meaningful, even though what we're seeing on the screen is not what really happened. So it's a similar thing, I think, with AI.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. One of the things about the randomization, I'm becoming increasingly of the view, having read tarot for like 30 years, that there is something intrinsically magic about it. Like the one thing, I've got a nice theory for how it all works predictably, whether or not it's right. It's a theory that works for me, but I still get stumped on how is it that the cards, like how is it that the right cards come out? And I can only come to the concept that it's magic. And I think, what you're just describing there with AI, it's the same sort of thing. And any artist, like if I was to look out my window at the moment, not that I'm artistic, but if I looked out my window and I wanted to paint a tree, I would be doing a representation of the tree in the way I see it and so forth. So I think there's a lot of power in all of that. And I think I do find that reading online and doing things through electronic media seems to heighten stuff as well for some strange level. I don't know whether it heightens telepathy or something like that. So that makes a lot of sense.
As an artist, we're creating representations of everything we perceive, and we learn techniques, and the computer is doing that too. It's perceiving patterns, it's learning the techniques, it's creating something that's completely different from what existed before. It took something and it shuffled it all up and made something different, and it's not different than what we do.
Exactly. And I mean, as I say, I don't want to get into the legalities because that's not something I really understand. I'm sure that will sort itself out a bit, like when music started to stream, so give it time, it will work itself out. But I look at collage decks and they're using sort of other artistic sort of representations and so forth. So I think we all do borrow and we all do artistically express and reconfigure things. But as I say, I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I am saying I really like AI decks and I do it unapologetically. And when I find a great one like yours, I'm going to get it. So one of the other things that's really great about your deck, as I say, probably the thing that drew me in first was the diversity. Your deck is kind of divine feminine centric, but also kind of gender fluid as well. It sort of has both of those things, but it leans towards the divine feminine. But it's
Yes.
incredibly diverse in terms of age groups and culture and so forth. So do you want to talk a little bit about why you did that and what your thinking was with that?
Sure. So having grown up in a military family, I was blessed to be able to travel around the world and be exposed to a lot of different cultures and also a lot of racial integration. The schools were racially integrated, the communities were racially integrated. So it's what I was used to, really. And it actually came as a shock to find out that the rest of the world didn't all operate like this. And, I really had this idea for a long time that it was only very small pockets that were, not up to speed with the rest of the world, but it's actually
If that were only true, Susan.
yes, the problem was far more widespread than I had originally thought. So having learned that, I really, there's my motivations were different, from like a masculine energy perspective. It just makes sense that biodiversity is necessary for adaptation and survival and so on. But from a feminine energy perspective, it's like they're people I love or suffering, and this is a healing tool. So that's where I was coming to it from. Like, I wanted to help normalize seeing things that are different from what we're used to, and that's not something that we can readily have available from mainstream entertainment.
Yeah, it's true. And I think you do it really, really well. Like, I think, I mean, I've seen other diverse tarot decks and I probably have a few, but yours to me, and I can't even explain exactly why. People would have to see it for themselves, I think, but it seems to do it more naturally. It just feels completely natural. It's almost like you kind of have to step away from it to go, oh, actually, that's sort of like coming from this, spiritual community as a family that's been depicted here, or that age group is a little bit different to what you might expect or whatever it might be. So yeah, it's done really beautifully. And I think, as I say, to me, just then naturally flows. But listening to you talk, the other thing I think from the experience now of using it a bit is there is something, because I was a bit curious why the divine feminine, would you do a divine masculine, that kind of thing. But I can see what it does. It gets to the heart. Like, there's something about the energy you've done with that really gets to the heart. And I find it's working extremely well in readings that need to do that and that need to reconnect somebody with that side of things. So that's really
Yes,
beautiful.
it's actually gender fluidity is something that I identify with. I feel like I spent a lot of my adult life in my masculine energy.
Okay.
And it was only after having been through sort of an intense healing process and like opening up the heart blockages and so on, that I was like, whoa, this is this whole different world that I want to share with people, or at least my version of it. And so because really it just so radically changed my perception of everything. I in selecting the images, it really is like a heart thing, like coming to it with like a love of the diversity and a love for each culture, and a love and appreciation for each culture. So
yeah, it comes across very strongly, and it's interesting you're sort of talking about the gender fluidity. A bit like you, I've probably been often accused of being more male than female, probably with some justification. And another member of my family that I won't sort of go into, but sort of was on the other end of that spectrum, like male, and was really much more female, and probably was gender fluid before, because I'm quite old, and so this member of my family is quite old too, before people really were accepting of that. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I really connected with your deck, because I think you do it so beautifully. It's just so natural. It's exactly like how you would want it to be. That it wasn't something remarkable, it was something natural. And I think you do that really, really well. So with your deck, how do you use it in your practice? I was just going to ask, what does it bring that other decks didn't? I think you've already started to talk about that, but anything else you want to expand on would be great.
Sure, yes. I use it primarily, the order just only recently came in, so I'm only now beginning to use it. But the primary place where I do readings is on my Instagram account. So I mean, I do also do readings for myself daily to sort of check in with spirit and like see, you know, where my energy is best focused for the day and that kind of thing. But yeah, I intend to use it on my Instagram readings for the same reason, to help normalize diversity.
Beautiful.
And help folks become more accustomed to seeing diversity.
Beautiful. And we will put your Instagram details and also the details, obviously, for getting the deck in the description box for this interview. But that's fantastic. Because the more that people see it, the better, I think.
I think so, yeah. And I think that what really appeals to me about the AI art as a choice for a tarot deck that other decks don't have is the photorealism. I mean, I feel like it gives a unique level of accessibility that other decks don't have.
Would you actually, that makes me think, I mean, I showed a couple of my favorite cards. I don't want to sort of like put you on the spot because you might have to go looking for them, but like, do you want to like show just a few cards before we are going to do readings at the end, but like just some of your favorite ones to sort of like show what you were just talking about? That would be really great.
Sure. Yeah. So I was actually thinking about this before we got on, because let's see if I can find the magician card here. Okay. This was really an example of me seeking to communicate in a feminine energy way, because in the Rider-Waite tarot, the magician, the way that he's standing, he's also male. There's a lot of masculine energy there, even though all four of the elements are supposedly, represented on the table and everything. But it's still presented in a masculine energy way. And so so what I had in mind for the magician, once I find the card, I'll show you, but it's basically a woman who's on fire.
I'll have a look too, and then whoever finds it first can.
Okay. And
if you want to tell me another one to look for while I'm looking, if you would like, I can look for another one as well.
Oh yeah, here's one of my favorites, the Two
of
Wands.
I love that one.
Yes, I really.
That's the gender fluid, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it just captures the spirit of the Two of Wands.
Can I just say I love your moon very similarly.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Let's see, Seven of Cups, one of my favorites too.
And I found the magician. Woohoo, there it is.
Great, yes.
Wow.
So yeah, the idea here being that the nervous system is where, I've mentioned this in readings on my channel, that when we suffer trauma, the nervous system tightens up and clenches up. And then the healing process is one of opening it up. And it's painful.
Yep.
But it's also, that's where the magic is. So that's why it's a depiction of her being on fire. That's the magic.
That makes a lot of sense.
Feeling is the magic. Yeah.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful card. Yeah, I just thought it'd be good to just show a few, because like just to give people the idea of what you're talking about. It's like these are really striking. Every image is very striking. So is there any particular, beyond say the things around diversity and the heart, is there any particular spiritual belief or practice that you do that you incorporated in this, or did you just say no, like I just want it to be as broad and inclusive as ever and kind of almost agnostic on that?
I did try to aim for as much inclusivity as possible. I mean, there's so much diversity in the world. It's like
Mm,
really impossible to capture everything. And also there are certain things that are like not well documented photographically in the AI
mm,
database. Um, so there were limitations. But in terms of like my own personal philosophy, um, I would say that um, the approach that kind of informed all four of my decks was a prioritizing of healing from
mhm,
trauma and
mhm,
addiction.
mhm,
So there's I have like a personal pro sobriety philosophy,
mhm.
and that's I feel has informed like the undercurrent of the decks, and the magician is an example of
Yeah.
that. You know, the idea being that you need to feel,
Mm,
you know, and that self-medicating is at odds with that, and that feeling is where the magic is. And so
yeah.
that's really, I think, the underlying philosophy that guided a lot of the selection of the images.
Wonderful. Yeah, and that's very empowering for people. So you mentioned your other decks. So you actually have 3 Oracle decks. Unfortunately, we can't show them right now because they haven't come through from the printers yet, have they? But
Not yet. They
uh,
will have by the time you post the video, at least two of them. Well, yeah.
okay, and
The,
if you're interested, I would love to interview you again about those. Maybe when you have all 3, and we'll show all
sure.
3 because I think they're all really interesting because they drew me in as well too. 2 are kind of symbolic, synchronistic, lucid dreaming type ones, and I'm particularly interested in lucid dreaming at the moment. So I thought, wow, because I found Sahira Tarot, and then I found your other stuff, and then you also have done one kind of on emotional expression, which is really interesting as well. So do you want to tell people a little bit of a teaser for if we interview about that in the coming weeks?
Sure. So the lucid dream decks, there are two. One of them is more nature oriented and it focuses on themes like elements and colors and landscapes and animals. And then the other one is more humanity oriented and it includes themes like being and movement and anatomy, house, community, cities, transportation, that kind of thing. So the idea behind it being that it's these are just common symbols that might appear in our dreams, but not only in our dreams, they can also appear in our waking life. You know, I can't count how many times that I've seen, an unusual animal or something and
Mm-hmm.
thought to myself, that's not something I see every day. What is spirit trying to tell me with this? And so I wanted to create a deck that kind of opens up our minds to this idea that um, the cosmos is constantly communicating with us through our environment, not just through our dreams,
Mm-hmm.
but through our waking life as well. So in lucid dreaming, it could be happening while we're asleep. It could also be happening while we're awake.
Mm.
Our waking life is a form of lucid dreaming. So
Brilliant.
those decks are an exploration of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope to just expand awareness on that topic and also inspire curiosity, because it's again impossible to include every topic, but at least someone might go, I wonder what this means,
Mm.
and then research further. So that's that. And the emotive expressions deck, it's just basically it's an oracle deck of facial expressions.
Mm.
And so it was my intention to open up awareness on how we communicate to each
Mm.
other through our facial expressions. Because even when we're not saying anything, the face is,
Yeah.
expressing a lot. So um, I'm hoping that in using this deck, that we will become more finely attuned to subtleties of expression, because some of the cards, you know, do have similar expressions, but there are subtle differences. And so and there's also, again, with this, as with the Sahira Tarot, a normalizing of diversity as well.
Yes, that's true. And it's interesting, when I was looking at it, it reminded me of something back from my old human resources days. It may actually be a really good learning tool for people if they ever go for jobs that have psychometric testing, because one of the things quite often is on emotional intelligence, and they often use a very similar thing. They use very subtle images for you to try and kind of read what people are saying. So I think if you get used to those subtleties, it's sort of a bit of a hack for that as well too, which is good. So just reminded me of that, and I thought, yeah, it just shows how subtle these things can be and how expressive the human face is. So it's a beautiful deck. So let's get into showing your deck in practice. So what we decided to do, everybody, is that instead of like asking for questions in this case, we just thought, let's just pick a key question, because we're both readers, so we can each do a reading. So I'm going to ask a question of Susan for this collective, and then she's going to ask one for me, and we're just going to draw 3 cards from the deck and say what we get for that. So the question I have for Susan is, what big transformation or breakthrough does 2024 offer for this collective?
Okay, so I did pre-shuffle, but I'm going to just do another quick shuffle. And what we've got, the Star,
wow,
the King of Pentacles. Very exciting. Oh, and the 7 of Pentacles. Okay. All right. Wow. So what I'm seeing with the Star card here, what drew me to select this image was that I felt that the person was, it had a very like manifesting expression. I feel like they're manifesting, and Star being about hope, faith and hope, and inspiration. So it went together with that. So what we're seeing here moving into 2024 is manifesting that is unfolding into actual abundance. So this is actually something that we may have seen some progress on this front let's just say the last year. We've been seeing some progress here, and the ability to really conceptualize what it is that we're after, align our feeling with it, and, you know, put a plan into action and everything. But it's actually, we're going to see it pay off in a major way, just
brilliant,
radically unlike anything we've
I
seen
like
so
this.
far. I mean, you know, pentacles to the max. That's what we're seeing here. So that's but then we have the 7 of Pentacles here. And so it's giving you this kind of like, be careful what you wish for energy, because, you know, then you're going to be like, what next? You know? So there's a call here to really process this huge transformation, and to not squander the lessons that brought us to that place, because the King of the Pentacles is really somebody who's so savvy with you know, business and health, and they've learned a few things about how the world works, and they know how to use that information. But with the 7 of Pentacles, there's kind of like a more careful thought process about how we manifested what because what we were hoping for and wishing for before, and then the way it pans out, it's going to surprise us in a lot of ways. And so so that's why Spirit is calling on us to really integrate the lessons, and think strategically about the path forward after this huge windfall that's on the horizon.
That's brilliant. Can I just actually, before you go into doing mine, because the fact that you've got the King of Pentacles reminded me of something I really thought was interesting. If you hold that up for people to see, the King of Pentacles, what really interests me, and I've sort of like mentioned it a couple of times in private readings where I've used this, is that you have her like a surgeon or a doctor or something. And I think that's really interesting when you talk about the healing. So just sorry, before we go into me doing the reading, do you want to talk about that? I thought it was such an interesting choice.
Yes, yes, because I chose a doctor because not only are they materially abundant, but they are also very knowledgeable about the human body.
Yeah.
And so they are practical on all fronts.
Yeah.
You know, that's what appealed to me about the concept of a doctor.
Yeah, I loved it because it kind of, in a way, the King of Pentacles sometimes feels a bit like Midas or something. It can be a bit not inhumane. Like there's nothing wrong with the King of Pentacles, but it can be a little bit like very material. So yeah, I just really love the choice. So when you actually picked that one, I thought, oh, I should have mentioned that before, because I've thought that a couple of times. So that was very serendipitous. So do you want to ask me now your question, and I will pull three cards?
Oh, and also I'll mention too that the King of Pentacles too, that doctor, you know, there's the masculine energy of a doctor as opposed to a nurse, where you would expect more feminine energy. So
perfect.
Okay, so my question for you for the collective is, what does love have in store for us in 2024?
Juicy. Okay. So firstly, the Knight of Swords. I'll hold them up again in a second. The Two of Swords. Gee, this is a lot about decisions and thinking, isn't it? That's interesting. Okay. The Ten of Wands. All right. So love in 2024. The first thing I would say is the Knight of Swords to me is brilliant. The thought is brilliant. The thought is fast. But I often say of the Knight of Swords that even though it's the swords suit, so thought is what it's about, it's the one card in the sword suit that often runs in before it thinks about it. So it's interesting that there's kind of an enthusiasm to make a decision, particularly with the Two of Swords. But the Two of Swords, and the way that you've shown this with the, you picked up that Rider-Waite-Smith thing with the eyes not being able to see. So there's not the full information. And then you have the Ten of Wands, which is carrying a burden. I think this might be a little bit of a warning for the collective about not rushing into something that you think looks like something before you have enough real understanding of it. Because if you do, you could get burdened. Now, this doesn't mean, I want to say for people, this does not mean that any love choice in 2024 is inevitably going to end up being a burden. It just means that it's likely there's an energy, I think, of very rapid thought happening around it. And it might also be, actually, I'm getting, it's not just about the thought to rush towards something. It's also the thought about rushing away. So I feel like for some, you may be carrying, it's going to be some in the collective, you may be carrying some burdens about almost programming or ideas about love that makes you almost cut an opportunity off at the pass before you really know what it is. So I think it's kind of a bit of both, depending upon who's listening to it. I think that for some, it might be if something new is coming in, you really want to rush with it, particularly if there's a really strong meeting of the minds, it might be good to just slow it down a little bit and make sure that the heart is connected, the other elements are connected, because the only other element we've got there is wands, and it's overburdened. So it's almost like slow down and feel into it. Does it feel good? Does it sort of excite you? That kind of thing. And do you think it could last? So for some, there's that, but for others, it might be don't carry old baggage and assume something about a relationship before you know about it. So that's what I get.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's a lovely deck. It reads like a dream. So is there anything else that you would like to tell the my viewership about this at this stage? As I say, we'll put the details for where to find you and all that kind of thing in the description box. But is there anything else you'd like to say now? Because I really would. I hope that you will have a second interview with me with the other decks, because I'd really like people to see those. People can see them, of course, now. Once they go to your Etsy store, they'll see them. They'll know what we've been talking about. But it'd be great to be able to do some readings with them live and all that kind of thing too when I have them, because I'm getting them. So anything else you would like to say at this point?
I just want to mention that the Etsy page does have thumbnail images of every single card. So if anyone is on the fence, that's an appealing feature in my book, if you can actually see what the cards look like. And so
that's true, because when I looked at Sahira's, I was going through thinking, this is great, and then I shortened the page of swords and went, I'm getting this. It's as simple as that. So yeah, it's a very powerful thing to do. Well, thank you, Susan. That's been really, really interesting. Thank you for introducing people to this deck. I do think it's really special. I think your work's really special. So I'm really delighted that you are happy to be interviewed. And as I say, everybody look out for when we do the later one, when the other decks are available, and when I have a copy too, so that we can each, because we've got to wait for it to get to me, because I'm in Australia, so it takes a while sometimes, but we will get to it. So thank you very much, Susan. It's been a delight, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Yes, thank you, Helen, and likewise, and we will see each other again soon.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.